The true crime reporter never settles for standing outside the yellow crime scene tape. You knock on doors, dig through records, and cultivate sources to get to the bottom of the story. I'm Robert Riggs, the host and creator of the True Crime Reporter podcast, back with another story from 3 decades of investigative reporting. In this episode, I pulled out my reporter's notebooks. My law enforcement sources opened up their confidential case files. We sat down together to talk. And you can listen in to our journey into darkness. But before you do, be advised that this podcast is for a mature audience and not for the faint of heart. Some episodes may contain profanity and graphic details of violent crimes. To follow True Crime Reporter, text True Crime to 33777. Text True Crime, that's 2 words, True Crime, to 33777. With that said, here we go on another journey into darkness. "22-year-old Melissa Northrup, the pregnant mother of 2 children, vanished from a Waco convenience store in the middle of the night. In the last episode, U.S. Marshals learned that a car belonging to a convicted triple killer was found near the site of Northrup's kidnapping. They didn't believe that it was just a coincidence. The race is on to find Kenneth Allen McDuff before he can kill again. Parnell and Mike McNamara fit the image of U.S. Marshals from the Old West tradition perfectly. Both wore white Stetson cowboy hats, Western-cut suits, cowboy boots, holstered handguns, and steely-eyed expressions on their stone faces. Then throw into this mix an aggressive U.S. attorney and one of the world's top manhunters from the Marshals Service and an Irish cop from New York City, and you got 5 men who hunt fugitives with a vengeance. As I told you in the last episode, Marshal Parnell McNamara's instincts told him that convicted triple killer Kenneth McDuff was good for the murder of Melissa Northrup.
He was the devil himself. I mean, he was the epitome of a cold-hearted, heartless, evil, dirty son of a bitch.
The Marshals wanted to start a manhunt for McDuff. The longer he was free, the more women he would kill. The local district attorney didn't think there was probable cause to issue a murder warrant. The Marshals urged U.S. Attorney Bill Johnston to help. Johnston is now in private law practice. We sat down together to discuss the McDuff serial murder case from 3 decades ago. Johnston used a little creativity to obtain probable cause to get an arrest warrant to search for McDuff. He found a drug user that McDuff had given 1 tab of LSD. A DEA agent verified that the LSD paper wrapper was a silver palm tree pattern sold by Austin drug dealers. Johnston says that was all he needed.
So the DEA guy said, tell me, bud, what'd it do to you when you took the LSD? And he said, I was copping tracers. And I didn't really know what that meant. He said, I was copping tracers, catching my hands. And he did a motion as if his hands, like he's catching a ball between his hands, but he was catching his own hands because of the effect of the rat poison, LSD. And so, in my mind, now we've got a controlled substance, which the DEA guy would say, yes, that is the effect of LSD. We had a specific pattern. I don't have the drug, and so I wrote an affidavit for the DEA agent describing what the kid said and asked the DEA guy, do you feel comfortable signing this as probable cause for an arrest warrant for Kenneth Allen McDuff for distribution of 1 tab of LSD that we don't have? And he said, absolutely. Because it's a unique deal. It's not like, right. It's not like some other drug. It's very unique. It had a pattern. So anyway, I called the federal magistrate, asked if he'd see the agent. He said he would. And 30 minutes later, we had a federal arrest warrant for Kenneth Allen McDuff for distribution of 1 tab, which we didn't have, of LSD And the entire Kenneth McDuff manhunt for the next 6-8 weeks was based on that. That's all the authority we had. We didn't have nobody had a murder warrant for McDuff. We had a single tab LSD warrant. He was chased all over the country.
Johnston and the McNamaras would work their normal hours at the federal courthouse until quitting time. Then they would hit the street looking for McDuff in the criminal underbelly of Central Texas.
It's so bad that if you're in it long enough, you'll be so depressed that you have to pep yourself up, because it's so negative, and it's a slippery slide to hell, basically, the whole thing. And it's terrible. I mean, almost everybody we talked to had been to prison. Almost everybody we talked to was on drugs or used drugs. So
Johnston says Marshal Parnell McNamara and his brother Mike, who is now deceased, were a force to be reckoned with.
So the McNamaras, our deputy marshals, were very unique in every respect. Their daddy had been the marshal. Their family had been in law enforcement for 100 years. And they operated the way they thought, and that sounds really corny, or it sounds silly, but if you watch the movie Tombstone and you think about how those actors portrayed the Earps, the Earp brothers, and Doc Holliday, their mindset, which was, we're not really afraid of anybody, and we're going to try to do the right thing, even if that's not convenient, and we're tougher than you, and shoot straighter and hit harder. That's the way they lived, and that's the way they were marshals. They were a throwback. Both of them were great horsemen. They dressed much like you would have 100 years ago. I mean, not weird, but just Western.
The McNamaras drove a four-wheel drive, jacked-up Suburban nicknamed Bigfoot. It was a rolling war wagon. Parnell McNamara says his brother Mike carried a 12-gauge shotgun bolted to a military M16 machine gun with a 90-round drum magazine attached to it. They called it the Annihilator.
We wanted to make sure that we outgunned these scumbag punks, because we knew a lot of them were armed. And we armed ourselves with the very best firearms that we possibly could. We had M16s, fully automatics. We had a couple of M14s, super bad 308 machine guns. We had 12-gauge shotguns. We had 10-gauge Magnum shotguns. We had the very best pistols that we could carry. So we were ready to do serious business with any of these people that wanted to give us a hard time or do something to us. Mike was a force to be reckoned with, and people jokingly described Mike as a modern-day Doc Holliday with the same,
Well, there was a quiet man there, but there was a volcano ready to erupt.
Yeah, you could definitely say that. Mike was my partner in law enforcement the whole time. He and I hired on with U.S. Marshals in 1970, the same day. And so Mike was right there by my side every step of the way. I never had to wonder where Mike was. And Mike was also my partner in life. We went to school together, grew up together, drove the same cars. And so I totally trusted Mike to have my back. He was always there.
And you were going night and day.
Night and day. A lot of times we were sleeping on the floor in the marshal's office. We'd wake up in the marshal's office, and then we would be off and running in every direction. We followed up every single lead.
Parnell McNamara wanted to get the America's Most Wanted TV show to feature McDuff as a prime suspect in Melissa Northrup's murder. All they had was a pretty flimsy drug warrant. The Marshals Service headquarters vetoed the show. But the service did send in the head of a task force called Operation Gunsmoke. Marshal Dan Stoltz, one of the best manhunters in the world, came to Waco.
So then we got Dan Stoltz, who was head of the task force and an unbelievable investigator, an unbelievable marshal, a super smart, tough guy. I can't say enough nice things about Dan Stoltz. Dan Stoltz came in, he evaluated the situation. Mike and I and Bill and everybody else, Sheriff Pamplin, ran it down to Dan Stoltz. This is one of the most dangerous SOBs in the country. He's killing people as we speak. We believe that. And we've got to catch him. Time is running out for a lot of innocent people out there. So then that's when Dan Stoltz put the word out to Washington, D.C. that we need help here. We need whatever it takes. We've got to catch this guy.
Stoltz rolled into Waco with a command post called Red October, named after the Tom Clancy movie. Today, Dan Stoltz raises cattle on his ranch in Texas. Stoltz retired after 33 years of hunting fugitives. Did you have a sense of how much work those three with Billy had done before you got there? Because they told me they were pretty much exhausted.
They were the ones that ran with the ball. You got to remember, nobody was really listening to them in the beginning. Nobody was listening to them, and those three ran with the ball. They didn't have any resources. They had what there was in that little office, and that was it.
McDuff's prison history was the starting point for Stoltz's manhunt.
I did a little research, and I knew him as a broomstick killer. And so I started pulling up his stuff. The first thing I wanted to do is find out who his bunkie was, who he hung out with in the prison, who would he reach out. It was my experience that when it's like someone gets caught with their hand in a cookie jar, it's not fun unless you tell your friends that you got caught or you got away with it.
The marshals needed intelligence about McDuff's known associates inside and outside the prison system. John Moriarty, an undercover prison investigator, knew that world better than anyone. When he first walked into their office, the marshals mistook Moriarty for an ex-con.
He came in to the office, and his wealth of knowledge of the prison system was just so incredible.
But at that time, he was working undercover. He looked and talked like an inmate. It almost shoulder-length hair.
Yeah, he did. He looked like he was out on parole himself.
Yes.
And his language
was colorful, to say the least.
Yes.
But he talked just like an inmate.
Yeah, he did. And, the minute we heard him talk and saw him, we said, hey, this is our guy,
Moriarty was a tough Irish cop from New York City, highly experienced in working undercover drug investigations. He was the only lawman in Texas history to go undercover behind bars as an inmate. From the time we met, I regarded Moriarty as one of the few honest people trying to do the right thing inside a corrupt system. So were you an Irish cop walking the beat in New York City?
Yeah, actually in Bergen County, New Jersey is where I worked, and right across the river from New York City. And
was there something there that prepared you for being a fugitive hunter later?
I really liked working undercover narcotics, and I never thought I'd leave that job until this case. We relied on your skills in your mouth and your ability to talk to people and be able to read people. I still think to this day I'm pretty good at reading people and if they're and how dangerous they are, and I think it's served me well in my life so far. So.
Bill Johnston says Moriarty pulled back the curtain on the inner workings of the parole board and prison system. The system tried unsuccessfully to get Moriarty to illegally divulge secret grand jury testimony. Officials feared the feds might discover how McDuff really got out of prison on parole.
Well, to me, he sounded like a New Jersey newspaper salesman or something. The way his accent and his pace of speaking was very not Texan, although he was unfamiliar to me totally. Like I said, he was foreign to me almost, the way he carried himself. And then I realized this guy's been through it. This guy's seen things. He has done some things. I didn't know they allowed someone to go in prison undercover like that, as Moriarty did. So anyhow, I was taken by him, by his professionalism, his toughness, everything. He was great. And so he made our world. It was as if our world was flat and he made it round. We were almost one-dimensional until John got involved.
Moriarty simply could not believe that McDuff, a sexually deranged triple killer, had been released on parole. Prison crowding or not, it just didn't make any sense.
He was truly a sexually sadistic, psychopathic killer. I mean, he had it all.
And if I had run into him on the street, he worked in a convenience store at one point, would I have gotten any sense of how dangerous he was?
No, he wouldn't be a threat to you. I mean, he's only a threat to women that he would target, and he got along. He wasn't. A lot of people didn't like him, but it's like when I teach a class for interview and interrogation of career criminals. I talk about guys that, like McDuff, that, when you're interviewing him and you're talking to him and he's looking at you, all he's thinking is, what's coming out of your mouth? How's it going to benefit me? Period. That's all. And that's what you got to remember when you talk to these guys, and because they don't care. They don't have no conscience. They don't care about anything but themselves, and that's absolutely true.
Next on True Crime Reporter, just as Sheriff Larry Pamplin predicted after he heard about McDuff getting out of prison on parole, more women are disappearing, more bodies are showing up.
During this time frame, there was other victim found near the technical school campus. Valencia Joshua from Fort Worth, she was found. We were out there for that. That's where I found a grave that McDuff had pre-dug near where Valencia Joshua was buried.
Aren't you glad it's not a crime to love reality TV? Hey, true crime lovers, this is Shannon, one of the researchers for this podcast. Paper Chaser Paper Goods is your go-to spot for all of your reality TV obsessions. Check out paperchaserpaper.com and channel your love of the Real Housewives with Paper Chaser's reality TV-themed gifts. From cocktail napkins to Bravo TV-themed invitations, Paper Chaser has everything you need to host happy hour at your place and be the it girl of your inner circle. Now remember, it's not a crime to love reality TV. Paper Chaser believes life's a party, so celebrate something every day. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for the latest Paper Chaser and reality TV scoop. We'll see you on paperchaserpaper.com.
True Crime Reporter is a trademarked and copyrighted news show. It is an original co-production with Podcast Ad Reps. Hosted and written by me, Robert Riggs. Executive producer Elizabeth Arnold. Audio production by Matt Stoker. Original music by Blair King. Associate producer Siler Burr. Social media producer, Grace Woodward. Publicity, Tim Livingston, PR. Photography, Igor Kragulats. Graphics, Brian David Kerr Designs. Special thanks to Gary Laverne, author of Bad Boy from Rosebud, The Murderous Life of Kenneth Allen McDuff. The audio recordings of the Senate Criminal Justice Committee hearings are courtesy of the Texas State Archives. Archive sound bites included in the episodes are from my original Reporter's Notebook tape recordings. And for our listeners who stayed to hear the credits, here's a little bonus. And you were hearing that he was always asking people about, or commenting that would be a good place to bury a body.
Right. It was as if in his mind, when he looked, driving down the road, looked out at the scenery, he was seeing it as a gravedigger. He more like some predatory animals. They'll kill something and they'll drag it someplace behind a tree or something, or they'll partially bury it to save it for themselves. That was the way he saw geography.